Let's talk about validity in relationship to one of the study guide problems. On the study guide, in section 3, you have to assess arguments for validity. Here's one. And by the way, the exam will have the exact same section. So this is where validity most clearly comes up in the exam on Friday. So we have this example, number 3 from the study guide. All Simpsons characters are excellent role models for children. That's the first premise. The second premise is some Simpsons characters are greedy capitalists. The conclusion, so all greedy capitalists are excellent role models for children. So this is slightly different than the examples I've dealt with before in these validity videos in that I'm going to reconstruct this in relationship to the categories rather than the whole sentence. That is, S is going to stand for this category, Simpsons characters. E is going to stand for excellent role models for children. And G is going to stand for greedy capitalists. So you see you have 3 categories linked by these R's and have these what are called quantifiers. So when we reconstruct the form, it looks like this. All S are E, some S are G, therefore all G are E. Now, I suspect that this is invalid. Why? Well, because we have a universal claim here. We have an all here and we have a some here, and then we have another all. That seems fishy to me. So I'm going to go ahead and try to do a counterexample. Now, I've posted notes on how to create a counterexample. Of course, you can only create a counterexample if you have an invalid argument. A valid argument has no counterexamples. That's what it means when we say, if the premises are true, the conclusion must be true. That means there are no counterexamples. So a valid argument will have no counterexamples. So, for example, on other questions on section 3 in the study guide, if you encounter a valid argument, you're not going to create a counterexample. You're not going to give me another example. You're going to say, oh, it's this form. It's modus ponens, for example. And that will be a sufficient explanation for its validity. But for invalidity, it could be a fallacy, but we don't have any fallacies named that use these categories. So what we need to do is construct a counterexample. Now, I have like I said, notes up on how to construct counterexamples. I'm just going to follow them here. What I do is I substitute into the original form. So I reconstruct the form. I've already done that. And I have to substitute into each of these letters consistently in a way that makes the premises obviously true and the conclusion obviously false. What does that show? Well, it shows that I can start with true premises and end with a false conclusion using the same form that the original argument uses. In other words, we show that it's not valid because valid arguments have no counterexamples. So notice what I've done here is I've substituted in for S. One trick with these counterexamples is to make sure you use easy categories. Frequently, the examples, the problem you're dealing with will not have easy categories or easy sort of things to understand. But what you want to do in a counterexample is make everything as simple as possible. So use things that we know very clearly, where they stand in relation to one another. We know for sure that all cats are mammals. It's just part of the definition of being a cat, whether we're talking about a house cat or a tiger or whatever, they're all mammals. We also know that some cats are black. That is, in order to be consistent here, I'm going to use this as a noun phrase. I'm going to say black creatures, right? So some cats are black creatures. Therefore, so that substitutes in here. So wherever S appears up in the original form, I've substituted cats. Wherever E appears, I've substituted mammals. So here and here. And wherever G appears, I've substituted black creatures. So all cats are mammals. Some cats are black creatures. These are both obviously true. Now we want to make sure that this is obviously false. All black creatures are mammals, obviously false. Crows, ravens, just for example, we have 2 birds there that are black creatures that are not mammals, so this is obviously false. So what we've shown here is that the form itself is no good. We can start with obvious truths and still end up with a false claim, even though we put everything in the exact same form as the original problem. So what we've shown here is that it's invalid. I can go back up here and say it's definitely invalid.